Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today we are going to be looking at Olive Ave's collection for spring called Succulent. This is a 9-piece collection which is Olive Ave's largest collection yet, but there's actually only 4 new shades. Walker is bringing back 5 previously semi-retired polishes with this launch, and if you couldn't tell, I'm very excited about that, but I will talk more about it at the end. For now, let me just show you the swatches.
The first polish we have is Santa Rita, which is described as a warm pastel purple with gold shimmer. So this is one of the new polishes coming out this spring, and it is super beautiful. I really love this one way more than I was expecting to, which I'm not sure why that's surprising since I do love the sibling polishes like Cala Lily, Blossom, or Partly Sunny from last year's spring release. The formula on this was also really impressive. It was very pigmented and full coverage on the first coat, just a touch sheer, so I would still recommend doing 2, and it gives kind of a fairy vibe. Next up we have Cactus Flower, and this is described as a muted purple with pink shimmer, and this is one of the returning shades this year. I feel like I would call this a very dusty or muted periwinkle kind of shade. It really flirts between being a dark dusty purple, but I feel like there is a very strong blue undertone to this one. This also had another really nice formula. It was a little bit more on the crelly side, but perfectly opaque in 2 coats. The only thing I don't love is just how subtle that pink shimmer is. Next we have Agave, which is a pastel blue with a pearl shimmer, and this is another new shade. This one again had a really smooth formula. It was a little bit on the thinner or sheer side, as you can see, but very even coverage for the most part, where again I only needed 2 coats for full coverage, which is pretty much standard for Olive Ave shades. I did think the color was really nice and delicate. It kind of gave a wintry vibe, but it also really reminded me of a lot of Daphne's dresses from Bridgerton. It just has this really delicate and elegant kind of vibe to it, which I don't normally love with pearly type of finishes, but I think this one's on the subtle side. The next polish we have is Lantern, and this is described as a deep grade green cream. And this is another returning shade, probably one of the top 2 that I am most excited for. I believe this one came out in a winter collection years ago, and it just cemented itself as one of my favorite greens in my entire collection. I think it's such a unique shade of green. I just adore this one so much and can't recommend it enough, even if this definitely does not give me spring vibes. It is still so good. The next returning green we have is Sage, and this one is described as a soft, muted sage green with a silver shimmer. This one had another super smooth, buttery, easy to apply formula where again it is a little bit on the crelly side on that first coat, but just so incredibly even coverage that it builds up to be perfectly opaque in 2 coats, and this is another favorite. I think the color is just so beautiful and soft, and to be completely honest, when this first came out years ago, I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but now I'm like so happy that it's coming back. We have another green in the lineup, and this is a new shade. It's called Echeveria, and it's described as a muted sage green cream. I personally would say that this is closer to a sage green in my head, at least, compared to the last polish, which is literally called Sage. But between the 2 colors, I do prefer the last one more. This one has a little bit more of like a yellow undertone to it, which you guys know isn't my personal favorite, but the formula on this was super buttery smooth. The other returning polish that I am so excited to see come back is Sunshine. This is described as a sunny pastel yellow cream, and if you remember my favorite yellows video that I did I think last year at this point, you know I talked about this polish. It is just such a perfect pastel yellow. I love the shade, like the brightness of it. It is just absolutely perfect for me, and this also has a beautiful formula that's easily opaque in 2 coats. The last new shade this spring is called Terracotta, and this is described as a light terracotta cream. No surprise, this is my top favorite from the new polishes coming out. I just mentioned it in my orange D-stash video that I am a sucker for terracotta shades, even though I admittedly don't have that many of them. And personally, I found that this one was a little bit more pink or just maybe brighter than what I would expect from a terracotta, but I still absolutely love it. It also had a perfect formula. And rounding out the collection is our last returning shade, which is Volcanic, and this is described as a walnut brown cream. This is another favorite of mine. I believe I shared it in my favorite browns video. It is just such a beautiful dark brown that has this like muted kind of cooler undertone that just makes it really unique compared to other dark browns that I normally go for, so this is another beauty. So here are the 4 new shades releasing, worn as a skittle in 2 coats each in natural lighting. I feel like the only one that has a little hint of nail line was Agave on my middle finger, but it was most noticeable in direct sunlight. And don't mind that I smudged my ring finger with Echeveria a little bit. That was my bad. So yeah, other than that, these looked perfect in 2 coats. And here are the 5 returning shades worn as a skittle. So I obviously am very obsessed with the returning shades. I'm so excited to see them come back. If anything, my least favorite of these is Cactus Flower, just because that pink shimmer is just so subtle. I really wish that it was stronger. Though to be fair, I think a lot of Olive Ave's shimmers are a little bit on the subtle side where, you know, if you're not in direct lighting, it can be kind of hard to see them. Like they almost look like creams in lower lighting especially. I feel like it has been a minute since I've shared this kind of flat lace shot, but I wanted to show the full collection lineup because I just love this color palette. Like, yes, some of the shades are definitely very dark or more of what I would consider fall tones, but I still think they work for the succulent theme. And I also just really love how those returning shades work and balance out the newer shades. So getting into comparisons, we're starting with Santa Rita and looking at it next to Chosen, which was from the fall collection. That's another warm purple with a golden shimmer, but obviously that is several shades darker. So for some closer comparisons, I first thought of Mooncat's After the Rain, but that one is a little bit more of a periwinkle blue leaning color with a fiery shimmer. So I think the closer Mooncat shade is Moonicorn, which I would consider like a warm toned purple, but it's obviously just a lot lighter, more like white base, and also more sheer in general. Not to mention the shimmer in that one is green instead of gold, so definitely not dupes. I think the closest shade in my collection was Emily Damali's Get in Line, which looking at them, you know, in the bottle, I was convinced they had the same purple base, but seeing them on the nail, they're not as close. Emily Damali is just a bit more sheer in its formula, and the shimmer is also way more glowy and intense, so it just gives it an overall reddish look. Then for Cactus Flower, I thought I could bring back Mooncat's After the Rain since I thought that base color just matched Cactus Flower a little bit closer, being this sort of like periwinkle kind of color. And I also wanted to see it next to Mooncat's Such Sweet Sorrow, which is from the very recent Baroque collection. I knew it wasn't going to be an exact dupe, but you know, color-wise, the vibes are kind of there with like the pink shimmer against the blurple base. But like I mentioned before, the shimmer in Cactus Flower is super subtle, so definitely not dupes. Then for Agave, I wanted to quickly show it next to Partly Sunny from last year's spring collection, which as you can see is a much brighter, whitened sky blue with a gold shimmer, so definitely not dupes. I thought Agave had a little bit of a periwinkle or cornflower color to it, so I also wanted to show it next to Jeannie, but I think Agave is just a few shades darker and dustier. Same goes for Holo Taco's Skipping Stones, which is another white-based blue that maybe has has like a touch of cornflower, but it's definitely not comparable. I thought maybe the blue from last year's Morgan Taylor spring collection would be similar because it had a shimmer, but it's just totally off. And then I thought to compare it next to Cracked Polish's PB and Blue Jay, which, don't mind, my bottle has the old cap. I ran out of the replacement caps, but it's just this dusty grayish blue base with a blue shimmer, so they're technically not dupes, but they are surprisingly similar seeing them like side by side. I knew I had something closer though, and then I remembered C&D's Fantasy Realm, which was released this past winter. It's basically another super light blue with an icy kind of pearlescent shimmer, but these aren't dupes either. I would say that Fantasy Realm is more of like a true sky blue or maybe like a Cinderella color, and I found that the shimmer stood out more in Olive Ave. Moving on to Lantern, I of course have to show this next to Holo Taco's Headhunter from their Dark Academia collection. That one is another very dark green. I think I would say that Headhunter has like a little bit more of a yellow undertone though, or Lantern is just more neutral. It's just more grayed out in general, so definitely not dupes. I don't really have anything like Lantern in my collection, but I still wanted to show some other bottle comparisons in case you were curious. Here it is next to Holo Taco's Touch Grass and Mooncat's Sagebrush, which I thought was going to be a little bit closer. It's kind of a similar shade of green, but a bit lighter and maybe more grayed out. Next for Sage, I wanted to show this next to Cala Lily, which is another favorite green of mine from Olive Ave, but that one is a little bit brighter, maybe more spearminty, and also with a gold shimmer. I also wanted to quickly show it next to Holo Taco's Time After Time, which is described as a sage green, but that one looks a little bit more minty almost. If anything, I would say the closest is Mooncat's Devil's Ivy, which is a magnetic, but you know, I'm not magnetizing it here, and it looks like it has a very similar silvery finish to Sage, but the base color is just a bit darker, a little bit more on like the Celadon side. Moving on to Echeveria, I was immediately reminded of the shade Terre, if I'm pronouncing that right, which is this beautiful earthy green from a previous fall collection. But I think I would say that that leans a little bit more yellow, and the saturation is also turned up a little bit. You can see just how dusty Echeveria is. So again, since it is a sage, I thought I could compare it next to Holo Taco's Time After Time, which, like the last shade, is looking very minty here. So I thought maybe the closer green was Holo Taco's Matcha Maker, but obviously that also does not compare. So even though I already compared Sunshine to Cracked Polish's Banana Powder last year when that first came out, I figured I could share it again because these two are easily my top two favorite pastel yellows in my collection, and they are virtually the same. They definitely both have an incredible formula. I think I would just say that Banana Powder is a touch more white. And of course, I also have to show Sunshine next to Holo Taco's Banana Medicine, which is another pastel yellow, but unlike Sunshine and Crack's Banana Powder, Banana Medicine just has like more vibrancy. Like, it's just so much more noticeably yellow and less of that whitened pastel yellow. Next for Terracotta, I wanted to quickly show this next to Amaryllis because it's the only other like warm toned pink in Olive Ave's catalog. And also for reference, here it is next to Holo Taco's Nip in the Bud from their spring release, but that is just a lot more muted, more mauve-y. The closer color comparisons are Holo Taco's Lowkey Blushing from the Down to Earth bundle. Seeing these side by side in the bottle, I was convinced they were going to be dupes, but I did also want to show it next to ILNP's Rosewood, which is also from a previous fall collection. That one looked a little bit lighter in the bottle, so I knew those weren't going to be dupes, but I was still surprised to see just how different these shades were on the nail. Terracotta is just much brighter and more orangey, less pink than the other two. And lastly for Volcanic, I wanted to quickly show this next to Holo Taco's Brownie Points from their Cookies and Cremes bundle. It's looking kind of bright here, but I'm sure many of you know that's a super dark, fudgy, rich kind of chocolate brown. So I thought a slightly closer option was OPI's Brown to Earth, which I think I still would consider like a warm toned brown, but it is a little bit more muted than Brownie Points, but definitely not muted enough to be similar to Volcanic.
So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Olive Ave's Succulent collection. As always, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this release because I definitely think it's such an interesting one. I really love the succulent theme. Like, according to Walker, this is a reminder to nurture ourselves and be resilient like succulents, because as long as our basic needs are met, we can then flourish. So as a concept, I love that. And I feel like this color palette just really nails it as well. Like, we obviously have a lot of those like earth tones, those dusty shades with a couple of pops of color too. And even though this color palette or some of the shades definitely give me more like fall vibes, I still think they fit the theme so well. And it's honestly just kind of refreshing to see this more varied color palette for spring compared to a lot of like lighter, expected airy shades that we normally get. I'm also a huge fan of how Walker is incorporating the returning shades with the new collection. So it's just like this massive thing, but you can also just get them separately if you wanted. I know I've mentioned it on my channel here and there that I'm just a big fan of brands bringing back shades that were just very popular, but you know, had to be retired for whatever reason. It's obviously understandable for smaller brands like Olive Ave or other small, like one-person owned indies, that they can't keep every shade in stock forever just because of like inventory, you know, space issues. And obviously, you know, to survive as a business, you always have to be like putting out these new shades. So I think this is just a great way to meld those two things of like giving us some new shades, but also bringing back some fan favorites. So I'm really excited to see what other fan favorites are going to be coming back in future collections. But back to this collection, Succulent is going to be launching on February 23rd, which is this coming Sunday at noon Eastern time. As a reminder, I am an affiliate with Olive Ave, so if you do want to shop these while supporting me and my channel, I will have my affiliate link and discount code in the description box down below. If you use either of those things, I do get a small commission, which again helps me out and my channel, so I greatly appreciate it if you do use either of them. But even if you don't plan on picking anything up, I would love to hear your thoughts down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!